call the meeting to order at 6:31. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. States. Roll call.
Here.
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 Present. Here.
Present.
Present. All right. Mayoral report. We have some officer recognition. We have a life-saving award presented to Jacob Ferris and Jake Bolton from Chief Gutchow to present that honor. If I can have Jake's come up. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have a couple of life-saving awards to present tonight. I feel like Officer Bolton actually is entitled to a second award this evening. His wife is ill and unable to attend, so he came with 3 young children in tow. So he's doing the batch dad thing tonight with 3 young kids, and he was still able to make it on time, so I'll give him credit for that. As the board knows, employee recognition is one of our cornerstones of our profession. Far too often, opportunities to recognize the good works of our staff are overlooked. So the police department's award recognition program is an opportunity for us to celebrate the good works of our employees in front of the community and the board, so that they can see all the good that is taking place. So on the right, we have Officer Jacob Ferris. He is joined tonight by his mother, Donna, on Zoom. She is connected and able to see. Stepfather Jason and his aunt Jenny. Jake, his wife is sick, not here, so he has got the gaggle of kids with him tonight. He's got Gigi, Charlotte, and Penelope with him this evening. Also joining tonight is his brother Shane and his cousins Josie and Brett. So this evening, Officer Bolton is receiving a citation and medal for a life-saving award from the Antioch Police Department. Officer Bolton distinguished himself by meritorious conduct in responding to a person who collapsed who was not breathing on May 10th, 2024. He quickly assessed the situation and immediately began CPR until relieved by the Antioch Fire Department personnel. Officer Bolton's fast response, quick thinking, and immediate application of life-saving measures directly contributed to the saving of this individual's life. The distinctive accomplishments of Officer Bolton reflect credit upon himself, the Antioch Police Department, the Village of Antioch. Not to be overshadowed, we have Officer Jacob Ferris. He is also receiving a citation and medal of life saving from the Antioch Police Department. Officer Ferris distinguished himself by meritorious conduct when responding to an individual who suffered a critical life-threatening injury on December 12th, 2024 at one of our local industrial plants. He quickly assessed the situation and immediately applied a tourniquet, stopping further blood loss. Officer Ferris's fast response, quick thinking, immediate application of life-saving measures directly contributing to the saving of this individual's life. Officer Ferris' distinguished accomplishment reflect credit upon himself, the Antioch Police Department, and the Village of Antioch. Congratulations. Yeah. How big? Okay. Future house. Yeah,
my God. Yeah, they have to.
Come on, Josie. Hey, all right. Family, I remember you guys. I know where everyone is from.
Thanks.
Thank you. You guys, if you round up the family and kids, you can leave if you want and go celebrate. I'll go on with the mayoral report a little bit as you guys are leaving. The acknowledgement is Ramadan from February 28th, March 29th. I was out of town last week, but I know I have some emails from some of the parents on Camp Grant. So if they're watching this, just an update that we did hire right after that last meeting a consultant. So there has been some follow up with her. I think one of the trustees later had a question or two about procedure. I don't know if you want to ask that now or you want to wait till trustee reports.
I could bring it up now.
Sure.
Got my list here. It is to do with Camp Cranton. And an email went out to the parents from the village, telling them that they need to come to the window, the front window, the payment window, and look at their account and make sure that it was correct. And then they sign off, and then in 30 days, they can get their reimbursement. But there was no mention of the lunch bunch on there. And the lunch bunch is something extracurricular that they do after school. And the kids can, if they want to, they can stay for lunch. They bring their own lunch, but they're supervised and kind of gets them used to staying after school or having lunch at school. These children are going to kindergarten next year. It's a whole different program for them, but kind of gives them an idea of what it's like to have lunch at school. It's important at this age group. And just to let the trustees know what lunch bunch is. So not everyone goes, but some of the parents purchase these tickets and on the ticket, it's 10 lunch bunches at $8. So they pay for $80 for one of these tickets. And the mayor said, and all of us said at that meeting at the library that we would reimburse them for everything. So that needs to be added to their account. They pay on the same portal. They pay on the same portal that they would pay their tuition. So it would be part of the account, part of their reimbursement.
Okay, that probably take us an extra day or two just to tabulate who gave that, just to get it.
I can't hear you.
We just have to take an extra day or two to probably go through the system.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's direction
But
the
it's-
board we're happy to.
Right. Okay. It's, as long as that's part of it, and then they can come in, check everything off, and they understand the 30 days because it has to go through the payment process and the village board and everything else. So, but it's just they want to be reimbursed for that. It's part of it. And there is no lunch bunch right now going on. Don't know if that's going to come back once we get a license and everything, but right now there isn't one. So this is just part of the reimbursement. Okay?
All right, thank you for that.
And you know, it's our mistake. We want to own it and we are owning it.
And
So,
I don't.
we're gonna
think
make it
that
right.
was Even just take count, I don't think
Yeah.
that most of us were aware of it even taking place. We're happy.
Exactly. It's just one of those little things that slipped. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
And then further on that, so the consultant has been hired
And she gave us a 2-week window for some information. I know that Ms. Nancy had written an email to the administrator and myself. He did write back a detailed response, so I'm not sure how much of that went back to the parents, but I'll follow up on that. Okay, so we'll make sure that the details from that email go to everybody else. All right. Other than that, I have nothing.
Yeah, that's all.
Nothing. Yeah, and then do we have anybody signed up, Mary?
Yes, we do.
The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. The board strives to make the best decisions for the village, and public input is very helpful. The board must protect the stability and decorum of this meeting. Please be respectful for the duties of the board and the democratic process in your comments tonight. Please state your name and address your comments to the board. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please be factual and courteous, and board requests that you not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during the public comment period. Rob Hayward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope this is the last time I speak about this subject. So, as you know, I live behind Johnny's Chop House. They're proposing to turn the backyards into an entertainment center essentially. And I don't know why, I've been living in fear over this for a while now. I don't know why I have to. They didn't do their due diligence looking into this before they even thought about buying this business. And since they've been actually, now that they've been a little bit busier now, I actually noticed the guy get out of his car and urinate near the fence the other day. I can just imagine how this is gonna turn into with a bunch of people out there playing their games, so. I was gonna make this short and sweet, and that's pretty much all I have these days.
All right, thank you. All right, so bear with me because Lori gave me a new rule that I have to read the consent items before we just call them as a whole. So first, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. Before I read them, are there any requests to remove any of those items? All right, so the first item is the approval of the February 12th, 2025 meeting minutes. The second item is approval of a resolution for a special event liquor license for the Brothers of Liberty. The third is approval of a resolution authorizing an agreement with Dom Enterprises for sludge hauling. And the last one is approval and a resolution authorizing a grant agreement between the state of Illinois and the village of Antioch for the Oslet grant. So on that, I would entertain a motion in a second. Motion trustee Pierce, second trustee Luther. Roll call, please.
Berman.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Dale.
Yeah.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. All right, on to the regular business. First item is consideration and approval of payments of accounts payable as prepared by staff in the amount of $2,499,917.81. Do I have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Motion trustee Berman,
Second.
second trustee McNeil. There is a large payment on this, which it's a $1.7 million, I believe, amount. So, right, some explanation.
Yes, there is 2 payments for the annual TIF distribution from the Antioch Corporate Park TIF. That was our commitment to Handy Foil for reimbursement for their construction of their project of $1.4 million, and then the annual disbursement of $350,000 to Fisher People Property on an annual basis for their original construction.
Any questions about any of the other items? All right, roll call, please.
Berman.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of a resolution approving a site plan for real property located at 1500 Main Street, Antioch, Illinois. Johnny Snack Shop, DBA JJ Twigs of Antioch, Resolution 2512. We have, I believe, Mr. McCarty on Zoom, and the applicant is here as well. So do I have a motion and a second on that item? So moved. Motion trustee Luther.
I'll second.
Second trustee Pierce for discussion. All right, so this one probably needs a little, it's been a while since this is here, so if there are questions from the trustees or discussion about this for the applicants. Or I guess for staff, for Howard or anybody else that may have knowledge about this project and the zoning on this.
And Howard may want to refresh it.
All right, Howard, do you can you just refresh the board's recollection on just the procedural history of this between the planning and zoning and, you know, what entitlements are there? Can you say, you know, are the volleyball courts a permitted use under the current zoning, so the board knows?
So, my name is Howard Kapari. I'm the Community Development Director for the Village of Antioch. So my predecessor reviewed this application as a site plan review for having, let's say, call this an ancillary use, I guess, towards the back, the 6 volleyball courts. So that went through that process, and then it went to in front of the village board for the first reading. Now we're here for the second reading. So that's where we are right now. It's kind of hard for me to discuss
Sure.
on an item that I did not participate from the very beginning.
Sure.
Just at the tail end of it.
Okay.
So I proposed, you know, added the conditions from the planning and zoning board. I added a 4th condition about the rear fence and the netting apparatus. So that's me putting my comments into this application.
Was there a fence added since the last time they were here?
No,
What was that?
there was no, I'm the one that put the 4th condition about the fence and an applicable netting apparatus. So there won't be any balls, hopefully going over the area of the property line towards the rear end.
How high is?
Well,
that in, or,
a person could apply for a fence that's 8 feet tall, commercial. So the netting apparatus might be a little bit taller. It depends on how it's gonna be submitted as part of the building permit process. But I don't have any substantial numbers or anything like this. This is a condition that the board is gonna review and either approve it or disapprove it or remove the condition or what have you.
I thought there was already a fence on the property line.
There's already a fence, yes.
That's a 6-foot fence. There's an 8-foot
I'm
fence.
not sure if it's the property's fence or the neighbor's fence.
I think the neighbors here, you can tell us whose fence it is, I think. And then if it's the neighbor's fence, he would have to do a separate fence, or he would just have to do a netting apparatus to block it from going over.
No, if there's no fence from the property line, then the property owner is gonna erect the fence and put the netting apparatus either on it or near it. But this is something it's a condition that I'm proposing.
Okay.
We did do, for Starbucks, it was built, did a sound density fence, they put a drive through there, which cost the developer money, prevent sound from leaving that property, that house, there is precedence for commercial properties to keep sound on their property. So we did do that and make someone do that. So there is precedence within the village as sound density fencing put up. Is that your fence you're proposing, some sound density?
No, it's a fence. I don't, again, like I've told you, this has already been proposed to the applicant is aware of this. That was for the board to make a determination tonight, either you vote for it or you voted against it.
So there's
They
no-
are aware of what's being asked, you know, by your group about, how you call it, a sound barrier. I don't believe that's gonna happen. But I can't speak on
Right,
behalf
yeah,
of the.
so maybe we want to ask the applicant if they have what their proposal is, if they're with the fence, because I believe last time, this is an addition, because it was in red.
Am I understanding there can be no changes? It's either up or down?
Well, this is, and again, Howard can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess I'll ask Howard. Howard, this is a permitted use on the site, correct? This isn't like a zoning change or anything. This is merely a site plan review. Site plan review. And to the trustees' question, we can amend it. I have no problem amending it, adding conditions such as timing, such as amount of courts, such as some form of sound mitigation purposing. We can make amendments to that. If you look at I'll direct over to page 87 of your packets, which is Exhibit A, conditions. Those are the 4 conditions as they sit, and they include Howard's condition on there, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 4th one is the fencing with the netting apparatus.
Correct.
And we could put additional conditions on there such as, you know, he asked for 6, you could limit it. You could put a time limitation on there. those are the types of things that go on. There was some discussion of a sound mitigation program. I don't know if that got brought up at the PZZ, not that that would be a bar for us discussing that further here. But I don't know if the sound mitigation, was discussed at the PZZ. I don't recall it being there. We do have a report on the file.
Since that's one of the complaints, that the neighbors had was sound. And I believe there was a lighting, they were worried about bright lights, so there is no lighting for these courts, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing was sound. I would think that a sound barrier would be a very good idea since this is up against a neighborhood. Right on the other side of the fence.
May I ask
Yes,
a question?
Yeah, sure. Trustee McNeil?
I know the last time that you presented,
He should record and give his name for the record.
Andy Hauser, part of North Shore Capital Group, working in regards to JJ Pennsylvania.
okay, thank you so much. I know the last time that you were here before us, we had talked about maybe approving of lesser courts as a compromise, because I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'm having a hard time because I think you have a permitted use and you were the commercial building that was there before these homeowners built their homes. But I also know, I've driven back there and it is close and we want to be a good neighbor and things like that. So would you be willing to reconsider doing 3 instead of the 6 to start? Is that a possibility, just to create some distance between, I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that,
Yes, we'd be open to that.
open to it? That was just one of my questions to see. I want to support our businesses, but I see where Mr. Hubert's coming from. It is so close, even though I do believe you legally can, but it's just one of those challenges I've been wrestling. In fact, I was dreading it coming back before the board because it's a tough decision to make, so.
Questions, Trustee Pierce?
So if it was 3 courts and they're away from the fence, and we require a fence plus a net, doesn't that kind of mitigate the sound issue? I just don't, I'm not an engineer, so I can't figure out in my mind how a sound deadening fence would function in this case, whereas at Starbucks, there were automobiles, just the idling sound of automobiles was a different type of sound. So I don't know what to mitigate. If we're saying less, maybe that mitigates the need for a sound fence. I don't know.
Questions?
As far as, so when they have the 6 courts, what does that do as far as, if you have the 3, how does that change the distance? Like what would,
So there's
What-
137 feet from the edge of our parking lot to the property line. So we have proposed that a typical volleyball court is about 56 feet wide, so it'd be 112 feet. So we'd push it to about 25. If we took out the back row, we'd be 56 feet away from this fence. So whatever the math is, 75 feet. Talking with the general contractor, what we have discussed is putting up an 8-foot fence that would be solid wood along the back. Because anytime you have volleyball courts, you have to put fencing around. Typically, it's chain link fence. Obviously, that wouldn't affect any sort of sound. But on the back, we would do 8 feet high solid wood to create a sound and a sight barrier, and then chain link the 3 other sides around it. And then we put a 10-foot netting above that. So now, if you can imagine a ball that's going to travel, it would have to travel almost 90 feet in the air, 18 to 19 feet high, through a batch of trees and over another 6-foot fence. The odds of a ball going into somebody's yard is 1 in a million. And I think if we can preserve that and we can put a sight and sound barrier 8 feet high, I think 8 feet is what the village permits for commercial fencing. And we would go as high as we could inside the village and then put netting over the top of it.
Right, so the situation is here, I can't negotiate on behalf of your side, sound barrier is warranted, it's up to you. I mentioned the fence, the wooden fence as a substitute in my 4th condition, which is shown in the report. I have my digital copy here on my phone with the netting apparatus that this gentleman just mentioned. So it's kind of hard for me to mandate or require a soundproof system.
I have a question for the attorney.
Yes,
Can we mandate the sound barrier?
we can put reasonable conditions on there, and I don't think that. I assume the applicant will go along with any reasonable conditions that we have.
As long as it's reasonable and it economically works. I mean, if you're talking about like a tollway wall.
No, no,
No.
no.
Sound barrier fence, does anyone have an example of that?
Oh, would the only engineer in the room know anything about that? Okay, so I'm not gonna put it in the spot. All right.
So if you typically drive on the tollway, you'll see, especially if you drive southwood, you'll see what's the remnants of the wooden fences that used to be along the barrier between the tollway and all that. Today they're putting concrete slabs. So I don't think he's gonna be putting concrete slabs.
I'm not talking about a concrete fence.
Oh,
But those are the sound barriers that the highway system uses.
but we're not talking about that.
But this isn't a highway.
Wooden fence.
And I think that's what they've already discussed, is a wooden 8-foot fence.
Okay.
With a solid fence, not slatted or breaks in the fence. So I think that plus the distance makes your sound barrier.
And remember, this is sand volleyball, so it's not thumping on the ground all the time. You've got now almost 90 feet. And you've also got in the summer, a very plush tree line. There's a shrubbery line and brush line that's already got fully mature trees between their property and ours. Right now, obviously the leaves are off, so you have a clear sight line, but we're not playing volleyball in the winter. And again, this is probably a time frame of, mid-April at the earliest to like mid-October, maybe a 6-month window of the year, as well.
What about, there's a requirement for no lighting. So your time is over at the latest 9 o'clock in the summer, right?
At dark.
So you'll accept that as a condition as well, correct?
Yeah, we'd be open to
9
that.
o'clock? Okay.
I'd be open to that.
Would you
Okay.
be willing to amend your?
I do.
Who made the motion?
So we have an
You and
emotion.
Brad.
Oh, I did. You guys did, and then I think there's obviously an amendment to what is on the proposal here. So the attorney want to summarize, and it really relates to the conditions. It does tell. So it'd be page 87, Exhibit A would need to be amended.
All right, so I would ask, we would need a motion to add the conditions of, there would be 3 as I see them. One is that, all volleyball playing or all volleyball courts will be closed at 9 p.m. And that would be condition 5. Condition 6 would be that the fence would be a solid wood fence. Hold on, a wooden fence with overlapping boards, with tongue and groove panels. Or board-on-board designs. And the third condition would be the number of courts would be reduced from 6 to 3. Hey, just for the record, I assume the applicant's okay with that?
We are.
I did not, it's first thing I put that, yeah. 9 p.m., wooden fence with his tongue and groove panel or board-on-board designs. And 3 in lieu of 6.
And just
Courts.
that fence just on the backside. And the other side would be chain link. So we can have visual of what we would see, security.
We'll catch the guy peeing on the fence.
Yeah, we can see what's going on.
Brent, you want to amend your motion?
Well, amend my motion to everything he just said. Do I need to repeat it or?
No, I would rather we have a motion to adopt the amendments as the previous, as stated.
I will make a motion to amend my previous motion with the additional statement as such.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Right.
I knew that. First presented.
So just keep in mind that the rear fence, it should be stated, is the fence line or the property line that runs along the 3 abutting residential houses.
Yeah, the west end of the property.
I'll second his adoption and the amendment of his motion.
So our first motion will be to accept the amendment, and then if we go forward, it would be a vote on the subsequent now amended original motion.
So, any more questions? We have a
We have to vote on that
motion first. Yeah. Need a motion, so it's clear.
Go on.
Motion to accept the amendments and the conditions 5, 6, and 7, that all golf courts will be closed at 9 p.m. The fence is solid wood fence with overhead lapping boards with tongue wood panels with board on board design on the back side. And the number of courts reduced.
Yes, all right,
That's good.
roll call. please.
Berman,
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. Now I believe we have to call the rest of the resolution.
Yes, do we
All right,
have,
so now we have, is that their motion and second still stands?
yeah, that motion.
Okay, so their motion still stands. Okay, so then I'll make roll call on the initial motion.
Berman,
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item number 7 was something that was just circulated today. I would ask for board approval to remove that item from this matter and potentially discuss this one in executive session if appropriate.
Would you like a motion to table item number 7
Yes, yes. The next meeting.
for the next meeting, time specific?
Sure, yeah. Motion trustee Pierce, do you have a second?
Second.
Second trustee Peterson. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item is discussion and possible final action regarding accepting and approving the base bids for the new Village Hall project, resolution number 25-14. We have our consultant FQC here in person.
Yes, I'm just gonna turn it over to Jack Hayes from FQC. As you know, the Village Hall project just went through the bidding process. There's a recommendation in your packet to accept the base bids, and Mr. Hayes will walk through the process and their recommendations. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. So we gave a letter to the village that outlined the process. There were 13 bid packages. We went through the public bidding process. We received a total of 70 bids across the 13 packages. We are recommending the low responsible bidder in each bid package. The total of the bids being recommended is $1,359,185. And that is consistent with the budget that we had previously presented to the board last October. So between the construction portion of the project and some of the soft costs or the master budget, we're still at that $2.1 million total project cost, 1.6 million. I'm using round numbers, 1.6 million in construction costs. There were a couple of items in the bidding process that I want to call your attention to so that they're clear. We had on the HVAC contractor, there was a low bid that was, in our opinion, considerably low versus the second bidder and the second groups of bidders, low by about $40,000. So we went through an exhaustive scope review process with that low bidder called RD's HVAC out of Oak Forest. There was some question with regard to their use of their controls contractor, a couple other details. And we've been back and forth with them multiple times, had them in our office, sat down, went through the drawings, had the engineers on the call, had the architects on the call. And we included our recommendation that we have checked the references and RD's has confirmed that they will comply with the specifications. And so we have recommended them, but it was a pretty exhaustive process. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. And we will keep a close eye on them as we get into the contract and start the project with them. The other item was the electrical and low voltage contract. That bid package, the low bidder was Associated Electrical Contractors. And again, their bid was considerably low. And so we were a little concerned, but we have worked with Associated before, so we were hopeful and hopefully to save you some money. Unfortunately, they had a calculation error in their bid, and they've requested that their bid be withdrawn because they made an honest mistake. They forgot a significant portion of the low voltage scope in their bid. The good news of that, although it is more money, is that the then apparent low responsible bidder is Turo Electrical from Antioch, and their contract is for $577,000. So that's a nice local participation contract, and we vetted them and everything worked out very well with them, so we're recommending them. And then I think the last thing in terms of bid process, we have a paving or a site improvement package, which was basically paving and some site development. And ironically, this has happened a few times in our history. The low bids tied, exactly tied at $45,000. So in our experience, what we do is literally a coin flip. And we've talked to both contractors, they're both qualified, they're both on board, they understand this happens from time to time. So unless there's any policy from a board standpoint, that's what we would do, and then we would sit and moving forward with whoever won the coin flip. Okay.
Thing is, when I'm driving down the tollway almost every day, I see this is the time of seeing it, the Patriot pavements.
Yeah.
They have ads up everywhere showing how they're environmentally sound. Are we including that in our requirement because we are near water and the creek and.
The scope of this project was specified to basically end up being just some replacement paving, some additional spots closer to the building, and then seal coating the parking lot. That's the base scope. There is an alternate scope to mill and repave the entire parking lot, and that would change who the bidder is. So I'm using your question to get to another point as well. I want to make sure I don't forget to talk about alternates, because that could potentially change the low bidder in this case. As it relates to the content of the design, their materials were specified by Williams Architects and their engineers. So I'd have to go back and verify what exactly that was from an environmental standpoint.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're just cleaning up the parking lot and resealing.
It is, it's a very minor amount of paving work, so.
Flip the coin.
And just for reference, maybe someone on this dais remembers, what was the number that the board approved it at when we were here? Was it 2.1 for this total scope for soft costs and everything? Okay.
And so when we're talking base bid, we're talking, just so we can further elaborate on what you're saying, the base bid is all the work. Then
It's
on top of
everything.
base bid, you've got like the
Engineering and furniture.
Yeah, exactly. There's soft
your
costs.
bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so base scope, trade contractor cost only, everything else. So furniture you'll buy, there's money in there to buy monitors, there's money in that 2.1 to do some card access, to buy network equipment, racks in the IT closet. So that's all included in that 2.1. But there were alternates that were taken, and I want to make sure if there's any preference on the board, because with these bids and with the soft costs and our fees, we're right around that $2.1 million. So if you want to go alternates, for example, on paving contractor to mill and overlay versus the seal coating, that would be an add of $33,000. The base scope has.
You got 3 volleyball courts. That's what we expect.
So there's parking lot, there's landscaping, there's a trash enclosure, there's a roof hatch and ladder, which the building does not have, and illuminated building signage versus just the base scope of letters. And then there's a manual transfer switch for a portable emergency generator. So if there's preference on the board, we can come back, we can evaluate that and come back, but those alternates are out there for decision making if the board prefers.
Can we get a write up on those?
Yeah, I think that from the top of my head, I mean, the big ones that would make sense no matter what are a sign, obviously, and some landscaping cleanup, and Dennis, I think, is looking at what Public Works would be able to do versus, cost benefit for Public Works versus just having the alternate.
And there could be costs down the road with surprises in this building that we don't know anything about. Well,
They build a contingency into there, right?
Contingency built in.
Okay.
To this project. The list of the alternates, that's there to sit down with the mayor, review them. There's some in there that we threw everything in there early on to determine, right, so you build it, it's everything we want to see what it's gonna cost. We've already identified some significant savings out of those alternates that we're probably just gonna take off the list right away, because they're not need to have, say, need to have. So there'll probably be a couple that I think the board will be interested in, and before the board with recommendations, costs, at a future date.
All right, so, I guess questions, and then next step on this, if we approve this tonight, then what is your next step?
We would then issue letters of intent tomorrow morning to these contractors. We do the coin flip for the paving contractor.
You gotta do something more fun than that, like, I don't, MMA fight or something.
Issue letters of intent, and then start the contracting process and get them, set up. We are in the process of, or Williams is in the process of getting permit review comments on the documents that we bid. And we'll have to work through some of those details as well. And because we can't start without a permit. So we're gonna parallel track contracts, getting the contractors lined up, scheduled, getting the permit in hand, so we can get started.
And generally, I can hold you to it, because I know that things change. The next question, say this gets approved, what's the time frame that you guys are working under on your schedule?
So we've got this project budgeted for 4 months from the start of construction. And I would expect with everything that I just went through as far as getting things started, there's gonna be about a 30-day window between now and when we can get started.
Okay.
And then 4 months for construction.
Back in September.
That would be July.
You should be in the building no later than that, but I would think in August.
Is one of the contingency expenses or anything, the soft costs, a moving expense, is that in any of this yet? Okay.
We did have a line item for moving expenses. We always carry that. And we carry that as by owner.
Okay. Poor Lori.
Well, I volunteer Brent to carry all the boxes.
Lori just got a new hatchback.
Yeah.
If you're available, that'd be.
All right, other questions from the board? Are you ready to? I need a motion and a second on this.
So moved.
Motion trustee Peterson, second trustee Bluthart. Discussion's exhausted, so roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, thanks for your hard work, everybody. A lot goes on behind the scenes of these meetings. Administrator report.
Couple of things were already mentioned, so my report will be brief. As the mayor mentioned, we are working with the Camp Cran / summer camp consultant to help us navigate the CMS process. I did send over a bunch of information to her last week for her to get reviewing, understand the scope of our operations and the conversations that I had with DCFS for her to start working some of those details. Public Works design continues. The work is getting near 95% complete on the design development component. We recently did have a meeting with the State Bank and the Lakes to discuss the July 4th events. As you know, the Independence Day Run for Freedom has been a part of this community for a number of years. And as Dennis continues to work with our engineers on the Woods of Antioch project, we've determined that there's a high likelihood that that project is going to directly conflict with a large portion of that route, especially given the scope that Dennis believes that we'll be able to complete this year on that project. And no matter how we dice up the project itself, there's really no way to avoid the route that winds through that neighborhood. So we are having discussions with the bank on how to address that, but there is a likelihood that this year we will not be able to hold the Run for Freedom due to those road construction projects. We started talking about alternate routes, but all of the work that has gone into establishing those routes over the years, as far as, even from making sure it's the right distance, safe passage, traffic control points. The current route itself pretty much exhausts all available village staff as it is, and making even minor changes to that route is gonna vastly overstrain our resources. So I just wanted to put that on the board's radar, that it's currently being discussed. There's been no decisions reached, but those discussions are taking place with the bank at this time. Yes, sir.
Is it not possible to run it over at Osmond Park like you did the St. Patrick's run last year? Would that not be an option? That was done completely off the roads and it
So
was wet that time of year.
yes, I think one of, just thinking off the top of my head, challenges would be is the parking scenario for that run, for the trial that we did with the St. Patrick's Day run last year. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 runners, based on numbers for the Run for Freedom. We'd be tracking. We've seen an increase the last couple of years, was good news. You know, we're up to about 600. So if that trend continues, now we're talking about places to park, you know, anywhere up to 400 cars. It just becomes a logistical challenge over in that route. And then again, then we're also subject to the weather changes, and if we have a muddy line, we are working through some of those issues to see if there are alternatives, or and the bank has expressed their commitment to want to participate in the event, so they're proposing some other ideas that they can be involved with the village. Just as a reminder for the board, our new parks director, Katie, starts with us tomorrow. And then we will have our new accounting assistant, John, starting with us on March 17th. The mayor and I, Dennis, met with the Lions Club this afternoon. As you know, the replacement of the Williams Park Pavilion has been a topic of discussion for a number of years. It's well exceeded its useful lifespan, and there's concern starting to develop just due to this age of the structure. And they have evaluated on their side what the best option in their mind would be to allow it to be used for their chicken barbecue event. And they have graciously offered to take on the lion's share of the replacement of that structure. Their estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 for materials and labor, demolition, new concrete, all those costs. They are asking for the village to consider a cost share of roughly $50,000 in material costs, as well as allowing the village electrician to donate some of his labor to install some new modern lighting and ceiling fans. So we are in the early stages of working through a proposal that we hope to bring to the board next month. But I just wanted to put that on your radar, as it will be something we'll bring before. From a finance perspective, timing is everything, and whether or not they're going to be able to start it pre or post our next fiscal year. If it's next fiscal year, obviously it'll be a budgeted cost that will come before the board for approval for the next fiscal year with the budget itself. But in discussions with Finance Director Peterson, we do have some unexpended capital funds available in the current budget, should the board choose to shift those funds, to make sure that that happens early. I think from our perspective, the sooner they can start with this being roughly a 3-month anticipated project, the more beneficial it will be, and the least less disruptive it will be to our summer events. As you know, the pavilions are rented by families, used for summer events over the 4th of July, used by our summer camps. So if we can get them started, you know, ideally sometime in March would be fantastic, or even beginning of April. The hope is that they're committed to have it done if the board approves it prior to chicken barbecue event in late July.
Is there a safety report that was done on that that structure?
I was told there was. Dennis, I have Dennis, something's involved in that a little bit before my time, so I'll have him speak to some of the details of that.
Yes, the Lions Club did hire, I believe it was an engineering consultant that did a review of the structure and wrote up basically a report of their opinion. That was done, I think, probably a year ago.
Did they supply that to us?
They did.
Yeah. Well, as we're considering this, we should be aware of what that report says, because I think we should be very grateful to the Lions for whatever they contribute.
And if I recall, they're originally gonna just try and fix it up, but they said the footings are near the end of their useful life. But we'll circulate that report.
The posts were sunk into the ground in you know, as was common during this type of post and frame constructions back at this time. And they just began to rot at the base. the contractor on this job is looking to hopefully have an engineer to place the posts on brackets, upgrade, which would avoid some of these problems in the future, hopefully extend the longevity of the new facility.
And this is a question for the attorney probably. If we're contributing money on this, towards this project, does it need bidding requirements or how would that operate?
They're contributing funds on that. I obviously need to look at the issue. I didn't know that this would be brought up. But if we're just making a financial grant for something, I believe that that would just be a procurement vote rather than, or no procurement vote. It would just be a straight grant. And then that money would be recycled through, but I would need to look into it. I didn't know it was.
And the attorney wasn't in there today, but their ask is generally, this is actually a kit that they buy. So they're asking us to buy the kit. And they're doing everything else.
And we're working through the details of how to do that, whether or not we assist them through a donation to their nonprofit organization or other fees that the attorney finds acceptable. I think there's.
So it's my understanding that the kit so mentioned would be a unique kit, a sole source, and it's the only kind, it's the only type of its kind as such. They'd probably be exempt from the bidding requirement. Of course, I need to look into it more, but I feel pretty comfortable about that.
Is it gonna be about the same size?
Same size.
Okay.
Yes. And then the last item I wanted to bring up to the board is, as you know, we had a brief discussion at the last meeting regarding the chamber's Taste of Summer event related to the Orchard Street closure. So I had an opportunity to meet with the chamber director, Barbara, who is here to answer any questions the board may have this evening. But she reports she has looked at all alternative options for that event for a carnival of the size that they're looking to operate in conjunction with the concerts, from both a capacity space and a economic perspective. She is of the opinion that by not allowing the carnival to set up on Orchard would inevitably result in the cancellation of the carnival itself. So with that, we kind of went into problem solving mode to identify potential alternatives. And I don't know that there's a perfect alternative that is out there, but a couple of the things that I would just like the board to weigh in on is we could establish alternative detours. Obviously local access would be allowed to come into the businesses as needed or access our new park. But there's a couple of different alternatives out there I think we could consider. One would kind of mimic what we're looking to do for our farmers markets when we host them over at the new park, where traffic would be restricted on the Depot Street, the old Depot Street, to one way in, one way out. So it would be closed at Main Street, and then traffic to access the park would be allowed to come in from the east and then leave back to the east, essentially preventing some of the concerns that were raised through traffic. I had a conversation with the mayor, as you know, spends a lot of time in that area. He says when it's a busy day at the park, it's almost a daily occurrence that he sees here and misses with people backing out of the parking spaces. So one of my concerns was with Orchard being closed, the increased volume, we have traffic coming back and forth. We have a higher propensity for a traffic collision or a pedestrian strike to occur. So it's our goal to stop that and find alternative means. We could post detours, routing larger vehicles. Obviously, trucks coming in and out of the industrial park become a part of a concern. So we would have to make sure that they're routed appropriately, either up or north or south on Anita, or alternatively out of the town heading east on Depot Street, because the smaller vehicle alternative route would be to come in on Anita, towards Orchard, and then work their way up through Picard and then out Williams. I think it's one of those scenarios that people will do it once and then probably avoid. But this is our first major event we're hosting since the new park has been open. So I think there is going to be a high likelihood it's going to be a trial and error. We're probably going to learn some lessons. But then evidently there's going to be some traffic concerns. So Barbara and I just wanted to kind of gauge the board's thoughts on allowing Orchard to close, not allowing Orchard to close, and if we do, trying to find some alternatives and see if there's some preferred approaches that the board would like to see, knowing that when we have traffic impacts, y'all are often some of the first to receive phone complaints.
I think he's looking for feedback on that one. Yes, sir. Any trustees have any?
If you close it, you would definitely have to keep the trucks away.
Yes.
Not let them try to route them through the cars and stuff. They would all have to go east. And then my other concern would be them parking. Where's the parking gonna go? Because I would almost guarantee you're gonna have to have an officer stationed on the Depot Street, resolving fistfights over parking, people claiming they're going to the park, this going on, that going on. I think it's just gonna be brutal, so.
Yeah, one of the issues that was brought up, that I didn't think would be a well received by the board was to allow the depot extension or Old Depot to stay open and restrict parking in that area. Obviously, with it being a new amenity up here, we want to make sure the public access is as easy as possible rather than closing off the parking in that area. But I do agree with you, trustee. I think for folks going to the taste, I think that is going to be very desirable parking, and we don't currently have any ordinances in place. And even if we did, I think it would be very difficult to enforce. Saying parking for park patrons only. That was kind of determined to be, just in addition to our public parking zones downtown.
If we posted as public parking only, can't we then write tickets in tow?
And certainly you could, it would be a violation of ordinance. It becomes one of those very difficult to enforce maneuvers. Even timed parking, in communities such as ours, although we have parking time restrictions, they're very difficult to enforce due to some recent Supreme Court rulings over a couple of years ago that determined that chalking of tires is unconstitutional. So
If we have somebody there and they want to walk from the parking to the carnival, they're obviously not using the park. My concern is people using the park, there's handicap parking there, there's people wanting to bring their kids, there's people in wheelchairs. There's just all sorts of access issues that are gonna go on down at that park area. And we need to figure a way to keep it the park area.
I think
I just have a unique perspective of what goes on there. So, the parking being straight in and straight out, even if there's one car and somebody has like SUVs parked on the side of them, I see them all the way every day get pulling halfway out, and that's when one car's coming. So if you're gonna have a lot of traffic two ways, I almost think you have to like close those parking spots and have people park on the Parkway Bank or something. I don't know, just for traffic flow. I could see a lot of little accidents happening.
Well, and there's the school, we're talking summer,
Oh, yeah.
there's the school parking lot.
correct. And in conversations with Barbara, if this event was being held at its normal time later in the summer, school would be less of an impact. But since the event was moved up, I believe to end of May. Am I correct,
The
Barbara?
last day of May is their last day.
Last day of May, so there is a little bit of overlap with school as well, so we're trying to work through some of those funds.
Do we know the last day of school, Barbara?
It's the last day of May,
Okay,
which would be 29th.
okay.
I mean, I think the residents would accept closing down certain areas for safety reasons. Maybe we make that parking all handicapped accessible for that
Oh, God.
duration.
It's gonna be
Well,
more accidents.
I'm saying, I mean, if that's the concern, and I think what we'll need to do is possibly look at shuttle buses or something else for maybe the high school parking lot or somewhere else if it becomes that big of an issue.
I think there's gonna be a large learning curve.
But if we get it out there to people, they'll understand why it's shut down and why we're doing such. And
In the past, a lot of people used to literally park on the dirt there on the old property. Yeah.
And I'm sure many members of the board do recall that even prior to the project, with the new park being done, to try to allay some of the traffic concerns, there were turn restrictions that were put in place because we used to have that problem where traffic would back up, folks trying to make the left-hand turn. So we did restrict some of the traffic lanes and left turns into there. It was one of those things the first year, there was some frustrations because it was something new, but in time, people grew accustomed to it. They learned when the carnival came to town, there was some changes. So there may be some growing pains with this again, committed to working out all different possible angles and have the least amount of community impact. But again, I know the kind of vibe coming out of the last meeting was maybe we shouldn't close Orchard, but I think that was, from my perspective, you know, sometimes I think I tend to still think as a cop and focus on traffic enforcement, but trying to look at the greater community impacts and some of the good that does come from other solutions to make it happen. The chamber, that is something that we do.
We can make it golf cart parking only.
That's a front side road goal.
All right, and discussion, so are we open to moving towards a resolution where we close Orchard and find a solution for Depot to be the main thoroughfare? Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
All right, I will conclude my report then. All right, thank you, sir. All right, village clerk.
The spring cleanup day with Root has been scheduled for May 20th.
Great, May 22nd. Trustee reports, any trustee reports?
I just have one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're before me. Did you want to go?
All right, so I'll start down here, down the line. Anybody trustee reports on this side? Trustee Pierce?
Mine's real quick, the people from JJ Twigs are still here. I just notice every night when I drive by, you got a semi-full parking lot, so I want to congratulate you on your opening. And maybe now this issue is resolved, my wife can try one of your pizzas. Congratulations.
Trustee Mason?
My report is, I just wanna try to get this military thing resolved. It doesn't seem like we had a town hall meeting resolved where it's gonna be. We went through the library and we put a resolution. It hasn't come back to the board for a resolution. Antioch 1. It was to put down, I thought the agreement was to put down, it hasn't come to a vote, to put the BFW with their representatives, the American Legion with their representatives. We haven't voted on which property it's gonna go on. There was a picture today. Other trustees weren't invited to that picture. There's 2 people running for office that are in that picture. It's on the Facebook page. The village, there would be an in-kind donation.
Trustee Mason, I was there as a
Hold on.
member, no, I was there as a, no, you're calling something out.
I'll hear.
I got the floor, thank you. So when other trustees aren't invited, other people are running, I'm not running for office, so it doesn't matter. But other trustees should have been invited to that, the township supervisor should have been invited to that. It just looks kind of weird that we're not going down the path of figuring this out. Again, that's still upset. Is this the Debbie Retner? You took care of it at the library,
Yes,
but Tom Shaughnessy's still wondering what's going on.
Tom and I was at the township building today and we are getting together,
But you-
hopefully next week about,
but,
yeah,
I mean,
putting together
pictures like that, you could have been invited.
so I get invited to, Wednesday's my village holiday. So yeah, so
One,
yeah, I was here they asked if I'd be here for a check presentation, so I just was here to work. So I wasn't here, yeah, I was just here to work and like I said,
we all sit as one board.
I agree. I agree. And, you know, I can appreciate the comment and it wasn't done for, I guess, political purposes as far as
I want to respond to that because I was invited to that because I'm a member of the Antioch Veterans Memorial Committee and their fundraising committee.
Well-
So I was invited by the chairman of that committee to come here for a check presentation for that. This was not I was not invited as a trustee or in any role as my village side. I was there as a representative of the AVM, just like I was when we took a picture at Raymond Chevrolet. So that is why I was here for that. That's the only reason I was here.
I have a solution for this.
So,
Okay.
there's a conflict because we gave money and you stopped all the liaison Friday, so if we give money and you got a sitting trustee, he'd have to recuse himself from everything, being on that committee.
Well, so here's what I'm gonna suggest. I appreciate the comments. I did when I met with the Lions Club today, said, well, you better get before the board and do the presentation and get a picture. So I'll make sure that, and I want to do that like ASAP. So let's pick a date that works for whatever trustees want to come for that, and we'll make sure that it gets done and everybody's included. If that, I can't fix the past, but I think hopefully that fixes the issue going forward.
There's two issues, if I was listening to trustee Mason, that need to be resolved.
Hmm.
One is the Veterans Commission
Sure.
for the village, and then the other one is the Veterans Memorial, two separate issues.
Yes.
And
So the Veterans Commission, I'm committed to, like I said, I got a little sidetracked with the preschool stuff. So that kind of took all the bandwidth for about 3 weeks. But yeah, one of the items I'm gonna talk to with Tom is the makeup of that commission, village, township, VFW, American Legion, absolutely included in that. I wouldn't even consider it moving forward without them involved. So we'll hopefully have something to present here very shortly. Let's, Rachel, you said you're here. I know, working or not working, we can make sure that Tom and I have that on our schedule either later this week or early next week, because we have several things to talk about. Thank you. Yep, Trustee Peters.
As a lighter note, I was part of, the parent guardian group at, Camp Cran the last couple of weeks, couple of
You
days.
guys been
And
in there or anything yet?
I got to see it up close and personal, and, I just have to say I'm really impressed. It was a very traumatic thing that happened. There were a lot of upset people, and those little kids just sailed right through it. I commend the parents for sticking to it and getting all of this done and being diligent and showing up every day and making this happen. And the teachers are amazing. You're absolutely right, parents, about your teachers. They're incredible. And like I said, the kids didn't miss a beat. They don't even know what happened. So I just want to say it's, we're all working together to get it done. And I'm really proud of everybody involved and all of us for owning it. That's all.
Thank you. Any other trustees? All right, if not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Motion trustee Peterson,
Second.
second trustee McNeil, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:39 and one opposition. We're gonna take about a 5-10 minute break and we'll start the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you. All right, let's call the committee of the whole meeting to order at 7:49. Roll call, please.
Trustee Berman?
Here.
Here. Trustee McNeil?
Here.
Spears?
present,
Present.
Sugar?
Present. All right, so no mayoral report. I believe somebody signed up to address the board, so please pass that down. True. Oh, shoot, okay. Right, yeah, okay, so just the second one. All right, thank you.
Which one? Big Jody? Yeah.
Mayor Gardner and members of the Village Board, my name is John Picchiotti and I am a staffer for State Senator Craig Wilcox, who represents the 32nd Senate District and the Village of Antioch in Springfield. The senator asked me to come to tonight's meeting to provide a fiscal forecast for the FY 2026 state budget and the potential impact on your village and our state. For months, the Governor's Office of Management and Budget projected a $3.2 billion budget deficit for the upcoming fiscal year. However, just one day before the governor gave his budget speech, GOMB unexpectedly revised its estimate, lowering the shortfall by $2 billion and raising questions about the sudden change in revenue. Compounding the state's financial problems, the Regional Transit Authority, which is made up of the CTA, Metro, and PACE, faces a $750 million fiscal cliff. These strains, along with other systemic budgetary issues, pose a significant challenge for the legislature in Springfield.
Last week, the governor presented his budget where we learned more about his plans and priorities for the upcoming year. He proposed a record high $55.2 billion budget with a proposed $2 billion in additional state spending. Senator Wilcox is concerned that to cover the spending and address the budget deficit, there is a possibility that the LGDF funds could potentially face further reductions. The senator believes that the local government should not have to bear the consequences of Springfield's failure to rein in spending. And regardless of what happens, the preservation of remaining LGDF funds will be a priority of Senator Wilcox this year, as he believes these funds are better spent here at the local level, where the people here can directly benefit from them. On a separate topic, the senator is eager to learn of projects that the village is pursuing in which you are seeking additional funding support. Our office is always here to be a resource, and if any state funding for member projects becomes open this year, we want to be informed and ready to help with these projects that will better your village and the communities that the senator is privileged to serve. Having an understanding of the projects you are pursuing also helps our office to be able to share grants that are being offered by the state that your project may qualify for. Thank you for letting me speak tonight, and we'll be happy to leave my contact info with anybody that would like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
do have a question for you.
Yes, hi.
I read recently that the state is looking at, changing the policy to where roads are an intended use of bicycles and not a privileged use of bicycles, which would then, allow users bicycle users, if they hit a pothole on our street, to sue the village, or if there's some sort of accident that before it was like, well, you're a privileged user, sorry, you hit the pothole, you can't sue the village, they've got some protections, but they're removing those protections and they're gonna increase our budgetary needs to maintain our roads. I mean, I would love him to give us bicycle paths and space for bicycle paths, because we really desperately need those. But if that's gonna be the case, we're gonna be, the communities are gonna be hurt if they have to pony up for bicycle accidents and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for that feedback, and I'm happy to follow up with you maybe separately on that or give you some more info. But yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll keep this clean because it gave me a minute to calm down, but I do spend time down there thank you to the Senator for his help, but for the board members that do not know and the public that does not know, last year, the governor's office championed that they're saving everybody taxes by taking away the grocery tax, which had zero impact on the state's budget, as 100% goes to the municipalities. So now we can go ahead and pass another grocery tax, whatever, and that money would go through the state, and they take a cut for processing that money for us. So it's a bait and switch. Secondly, the LGDF is historically always been a 10% cut of our income tax comes back to the village for funding our operations. And over time, his office has cut that to 5-point-some%. And we've been fighting every year we go to Springfield to fight to get that money back. And we're basically wasting our time. So I'm not even wasting my time going there this April because it's not worth it. But just be aware that the state is balancing their budget off our backs, and your local tax dollars are being used to balance their misspending of your money. So that's all I'll say about that, but thank you for his working on our behalf.
Definitely, yeah. And like I said too, if you have projects that you're looking for help for, the senator is asking, just so that he has that, if the funding opens up, we just want to be able to help and be like a resource. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's my soapbox, but okay, regular business. Approval of the February 12th, 2025 meeting minutes as presented. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion trustee Berman,
Second.
second trustee McNeil. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
Luther,
I'll abstain since I wasn't at that.
McNeil,
Yes.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
5 voting yes, 1 abstention. Next is the MGT presentation of a compensation study, KDE from MGT on Zoom to present. Administrator Gutchow.
Yep, so just very briefly before Ms. Yee hops on and kind of walks through the data that she collected and the methodology. Just wanted to walk the board through kind of how we arrived at today, some of the background and some of the kind of the goals that we laid in place for MGT. So as the board may recall, the compensation study as a whole was initiated to address some of our ongoing recruitment retention challenges. One of the things that we've identified consistently through some of the exit interviews as employees who left the organization over the last year and a half or so, was consistently tied back to compensation competitiveness, as a key factor for employee departures. So we commissioned this study in response to that, decided to go with MGT Consulting to evaluate our overall compensation strategy and ensure that it supports both attracting new talent and be able to ensure the very talented staff that we have on hand today. You'll see as you go through this, is that by using MGT Consulting as an outside independent firm that specializes in public sector compensation, it's going to provide the board with some information that will be unbiased and data-driven assessments, free from any real internal input other than us supplying data to them based on our current compensation ranges. They were able to leverage their large market presence to provide a broader market perspective, use some of their sophisticated benchmarking tools to gauge where our compensation packages currently fall, and then use those resources to minimize the burdens of conducting an internal compensation study. As you know, something like this is be a very large undertaking, and with the limited staff that we currently have, it would have been probably operationally impossible to get a good outcome. The data that you're going to be presented based on the new proposed salary ranges is targeting the 50th percentile of our current competitive market. What the 50th percentile means is that they're working to align our strategy, our salaries, with the median compensation levels on what the other comparable municipalities within our area are. And really that helps balance some of the objectives of making sure that we have market competitiveness within the public sector amongst these other communities that we identified as comparable, but also brings and ensures financial responsibility to make sure that we're not exceeding market rates for compensation ranges. So one of the largest things, as I mentioned, that we wanted to address through this process is to address some of the impacts of employee turnover. While any one of us within the village staff is certainly replaceable, having staff with long tenure with the village does incur on other costs associated with that turnover. I just asked the board to keep in mind that when we do turn staff over, there are recruitment costs, training costs, and we do reduced operational efficiencies. I think a good example of when that would occur would be within our public works department. And we lose a seasoned public works laborer who has over 10 years, and in some cases, nearly 20 years of experience that departs our organization for another higher paid organization. 20 years of that job-related know-how walks out the door along with them. While Dennis is certainly able to find somebody new to fill that spot, just imagine the time and effort that's involved in him making sure that that individual is trained, we're up to speed, learns how to fix the water mains, learns how to plow the streets, gets their CDLs, other types of things that need to happen. And again, this results in operational disruptions and in fact efficiencies in our part. Although that individual may be making less, the time spent doing the job is probably going to take more on the productivity side. One other thing we've identified is a significant challenges is as these positions have turned over, we have experienced higher replacement costs of employees within the ranges. Because of the positions, we're having staff within a number of years of tenure and experience with the village. And because of the market competitive environment right now, we're having to set entry-level salaries higher than many of these individuals that have the tenure. So again, as an employer, we always want to reward time with the organization based on performance. But when we're finding circumstances where employees with no experience or none of the certifications or relative training are walking in the door, making nearly what a 20-year employee may be making currently, I think we should all be able to agree that there's a trend that should be addressed through the process of this. So kind of the moving forward, I think what we're seeking tonight is for Ms. Yee to present some of the methodology and pose the new salary ranges to the board and help you understand how they were established, as well as some adjustments within the pay grades. And tonight, we're just seeking discussions amongst the board to try to work towards securing your support to advance this item to the next village board meeting. And with that, unless you have any questions at this point for me, I will turn it over to Ms. E.
Before she starts, I just want to bring up one thing, and again, Jeff filled in most of this, but one of the things that I'm happy we did this is because it's an external source. You know, we've done these before internally, which again takes up a lot of resources and time. I will say that one of the things that I've noticed that we have a hard time hiring and retaining people are definitely at the administrative staff level and at the public works, like labor level. We seem to be really having a hard time not losing people to other communities or, you know, them actively recruiting our, our members. So that's something that we really have to be mindful of, you know, and at least especially in those categories. And I think, you know, getting the people to the minimum wages is, you know, the important part on this at least. I will say that I've told them, and we can get more into the weeds on this at a later date, but I never understand where you come into a position and you are like a number, you're number 8, and then you've been here so many years, and just because you're a warm body, you get the same as the people who are here working harder. So I think there's got to be some merit-based element to this when we finally have like an approval. But after that, I'll leave it to the consultant, Ms. Yee. I think, Jeff, does there anything else you want to add after that?
No, man, there's a very good comments, and part of the implementation strategy that we're working towards internally does kind of help transition us towards a blended merit-based increase system where performance will be a large factor in considering annual increases.
And I think as a board, and we have to look at a policy in addition to salaries, you know, the other fringe benefits, how we do vacation, because if we hire somebody here, they get 0 days and they have to earn them. I know there's some risk if somebody leaves right away, but imagine moving jobs where you have a couple weeks vacation and you come here and you have 0. So there's certain things that we can do on that end probably to entice, you know, recruitment or make sure we keep people.
Yeah, and just the one thing I would like to just once again highlight to point out as we move through the discussions with our consultant from MGT is tonight we're really focusing on the salary ranges themselves that were established. You know, the board was provided a tremendous amount of information. You were given the full study. It does break it down into individual position levels. So you certainly have that data if you wish to review it, but for tonight's purposes of discussion, we're really trying to focus on those salary ranges that are being established, and that will ultimately be what we're seeking approval from the board to recreate.
Jeff, when did we pass those current salary ranges? That wasn't too long ago.
Was it 2022 or
Year, 2 years?
Yeah, so it's 2022. Unfortunately, like many of these processes, you always start running behind the times. So the 2022 study was approved using early 2021 data. So it's always lags behind it. We're going to run into some of that same challenge with this one, and that's part of the benefit of having MGT on board because they can help us work through some of the kind of the finer details of how to make sure we're not as drastically impacted. But as we work through this implementation, because even with this, you know, we're in 2025, much of the data that was collected was in late 2024. So it's again just trying to, you know, the employment market conditions I think are evolving probably more quickly than any of us have ever seen. So it's just trying to keep us in that competitive range. Again, understanding we don't want to give away the farm.
One thing I'd like to know is how many people in the last year left because they weren't being paid enough, and because you said you did exit interviews, and how many left, especially in the administrative level, that were receiving a nice encouragement to leave.
Sure, and I would certainly be happy to help provide some of that data, HR offline.
Yeah.
Katie?
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Hear me? Good? Yes? Okay. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you all for having me. My name is Katie and I'm with MGT, obviously. We were formerly GovHR. Some of you who have been around the public sector for a while may be familiar with GovHR. I myself have been with MGT GovHR for just about 2.5 years now, working primarily on classification and compensation studies. I am located here in Illinois. I'm actually over in St. Charles, so not too far from you. And prior to joining MGT, I did work in human resources in the public sector for DuPage County government and the health department for close to 30 years. I like to say I was born doing human resources, just so that, you know, you think that I'm close to 30 years old. So, but I'm going to go through agenda tonight and talk to you a little bit about the process of a compensation study. And you brought up some great points, and hopefully some of my slides are going to even expand on the information that you have and give you some more information about some of the points that you were just talking about. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully now you can all see that, and we'll go ahead and put it in exciting presentation mode. And there we go. And it's telling me to turn on subtitles. I don't think we need that. So again, thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the compensation study process. So the agenda here, scope of work, the compensation survey process or the market survey that we engaged in. I'll talk about the proposed compensation plan, implementation of a compensation plan, future administration, which is very important with any type of compensation plan, and then questions. So right out of the get-go, this is a little bit about what you were just talking about, is why would you do a compensation study? Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, just to maintain your market competitiveness. You want to make sure that you're keeping track and keeping pace with what's going on around you, right? And if your last study was like in 2021, well, a lot has happened since then. You know, post-COVID, it was really hard to recruit. Then it got a little easier to recruit. And now we're kind of slipping back into that hard to recruit phase. Especially, you know, what I'm hearing from some of our recruiters is that finance positions are one of the positions that they're really struggling with right now. And then you had mentioned public works as well. Another reason to have a compensation study is it helps you plan for your upcoming fiscal year when you're talking about your budgeting processes. You know, you can survey the market and find out what you might want to do as far as your COLA or your merit increases, or even to help you get some data if you're going through contract negotiations. So the scope of work, I always say that there's just a lot of bullet points on this slide because a compensation study really encompasses a lot of moving parts. We have the study meetings, we have the preparation, we put together a market survey, we determine a grouping of comparable communities that we use for the market survey, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We do some analysis of the market data. We develop a draft plan, we get feedback on that plan, we put together that report that you probably have, and then we finalize the report and we do these presentations. So let's talk a little bit about the comparable community or the comparable agency process. So the 8 factors that you see up here on the screen, equalized assessed value all the way down to proximity, these are the same factors that we use for all the communities that we're doing compensation studies for within the state of Illinois. And the reason we use these factors is because we are able to pull some of this data from the Illinois Controller's website and the annual financial reports that communities are required to file. And by pulling from the controller's website, then we know that we're kind of comparing apples to apples because we're pulling report information that's consistent across the board. So what we do is we take that criteria and we apply it to communities within your surrounding area. And then those that score highest in these comparable communities kind of rise to the top as being closestly comparable to Antioch or to your community. And you'll see in Appendix A, we have a listing, more detailed listing of the methodology and how we go through that process and how the points are assigned. And it's a very objective way to kind of pull who your comparable communities are, rather than just kind of, picking the ones that are close by to you or something along those lines. So after we went through that process, these are the communities that kind of rose to the top and scored the highest as we were looking at those communities most comparable to Antioch. The other thing that we did with this study is we also surveyed a couple of park districts in those situations where the park district was separate from the municipality. So just looking at this list, I think Grays Lake was one of those where the park district was separate. So we sent one of our surveys to, Grays Lake and then one to the Grays Lake Park District. So our market survey is an online survey. It includes little position descriptions for all the positions that we're surveying for. And what the communities that are responding to the survey do is they match it up with their positions and they send us back their data. This is a very common practice, and since I've been working with MGT, I can't even count the number of Illinois communities that I've worked with, let alone, in other states as well. But this is a very common practice for collecting survey data back. When we do get the data back, though, we do go through a cleaning process with it. So we will kind of take a look at the data that was returned to us and make sure that it seems like it's a good match. If salary data that was returned to us is either significantly higher or significantly lower, we might question that data, or we might remove it from the analysis altogether. When we're doing, I'm going to back up just a little quickly. When we're doing our market analysis too, the data that we're really looking for are salary ranges. So salary range minimums and maximums. A lot of times communities will also give us their actual salaries, but we're really looking for those minimums and maximums as the best gauge for the market for the position. Because, as in the public sector, a lot can go into actual salaries. You might have longevity that is impacting someone's actual salary, or maybe they have taken on a combined position and, they're doing multiple roles. And so their actual salary is a little, reflective of that. So again, when we're collecting this data back, our preference really is to use salary range minimums and maximums for our analysis. So then from there, we take all that data and we develop some proposed compensation structures. And as mentioned, we targeted the 50th percentile of the market, and 50th percentile is right at the middle. So we typically would not recommend going below the middle of the market. Again, if you're going through this process, that would be a little counterintuitive for you to be looking to pay lower than the market. So when we're developing those proposed pay ranges, what you see in table 1 and table 2 of the report, which I'm going to pull up here shortly for us to talk about, you'll see that proposed compensation plan and the salary range minimums and maximums based on that 50th percentile of the market. As far as proposed implementation of a compensation plan, our primary recommendation is always that first bullet point here on the slide. Any employee whose current pay is falling below the proposed minimum of the range, our suggestion is always to bring that employee to the minimum as soon as possible. That's really our primary recommendation. What communities do from there is completely discretionary. But we do have some recommendations and some best practices that we've kind of seen along the way, and we can always share those, with your community as you're kind of deciding on how you want to do your implementation. But if employees' compensation already falls within that range, then they can just be slotted into the range at their present compensation. Again, some communities might decide to do implementation adjustments, kind of one-time adjustments at the time that they implement the new salary ranges. And then for that last bullet point, if employees are above the maximum of the proposed range, what we typically recommend is maybe holding their salary until the pay range catches up, and then, reward them maybe with lump sum increases or bonuses that are not tied to increasing their salary any further above the maximum. Future administration of the plan. We always say that compensation plan is like a living, breathing thing. It needs to be looked at and adjusted, really annually. There are some years when you may not need to move your salary ranges. I can think of a time back in like 2014, 2015, when I was in human resources and I didn't move my salary ranges because it was, easy for me to recruit at that point in time. However, right now with the cost of living and the unemployment rate, ranges probably do need to be adjusted depending upon what those comparable communities are doing. So going back to that slide with the comparable communities that we talked about, you now have that list of contacts that you can reach out to on an annual basis and say, hey, what are you guys doing? What's your cost of living increase going to be this year? Or what's your merit increase going to be? And then you can use that data to make kind of an informed decision as to what you want to do with your pay ranges and whether or not you want to adjust those or leave them alone for a year or something like that. Okay, that's the end of my slides. I am going to close out the slide presentation here and pull up the report so we can talk about some of those tables. And I am not sure if you can see this screen because sometimes it works with Zoom and sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to start over again with the share and make sure you can see that.
And one trustee that I believe had her hand up, trustee Peterson.
I have a question.
Sure.
Excuse me. These communities that you are going to use as comparables to us, how many of them are home rule communities as opposed to what we are?
That was not one of the factors that we looked at when we were establishing the comparables, but it's absolutely something that we could go back and indicate and mark on the, within the report and within the study if that's some additional data that you would like.
There's a big difference in population. Our community to say Lake in the Hills, that's a home rule community.
Okay.
Trustee Pierce.
I just want to touch on what trustee Peterson's saying because she's starting to hit a point there. As I was looking through your tables, which you're going to go over next, your comparable communities, I have a question about those because you listed 16 communities. One of them is Barrington, and I drive through Barrington. I'm like, we're not comparable to Barrington. I know a lot of people would like to be. Gray's Lake, you have our EAV is 422 million, and Gray's Lake is 686. You have Vernon Hills at 1.3 billion EAV. Lincolnshire 676 billion. And then Woodstock is 624 billion as an EAV, which then directly impacts the amount of property taxes they can take. You've got a couple low income EAVs in there, such as North Chicago, but surprisingly, North Chicago collects the second most amount of property taxes, which is probably coming from the Navy base. So that's might be so I'm really questioning your comparables in here because there's more that are substantially higher in EAV, which then skews the amount of money they can take in and the services they can provide and the pay they can pay. So I'm concerned we're already starting off at a skewered higher level. And so if you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, that's definitely something we can go back and double check and take a look at. I'm just going to bounce down to our comparable analysis here. So these are when we're doing the comparable community analysis, we take a look at, again, we pull that data, all that data comes from the Illinois Controller's website. And then we assign it either a score based on how close or how far away it is from Antioch, same information from the website. And that's where you get, this is kind of small. Let me make that bigger. But again, this is where we get like the listing of the communities. And then, the scores that are tied into each of those factors. And then we look at the communities that had the highest matching scores. But again, we can go back and we can take a look at some of those numbers. We can add home rule to that if that's something that you think would make an impact, and we can see if that adjusts or changes any of the comparables if that's something you're interested in us pursuing.
I'd be interested, I'm just really, I think if we're comparing apples to apples, they have to be communities that are like us, not communities that are substantially higher than us or substantially lower than us. They should be right at what we are.
I didn't get into the, I asked this question of, when I saw some of this today, of, how come Lindenhurst and Villa aren't in there? Because to me, they seem like our most similar towns, or I guess located where we're at, like the same little lakes,
thinking the same
probably,
thing.
across the border. So I would say maybe, if we could look at some of those included. I mean, I'm not questioning Round Lake Beach, some of,
Round Lake Beach is in here.
Yeah.
They're fairly close to us, actually. And
Fox Lake, I think, was the closest in here. I mean, as far as like the 100 percentile, if I read right. But I'm always curious about, it seems like,
Is Round Lake Beach the home rule?
They've got 26,000, so they may be.
Yeah, they may be. See, and that's gonna be a factor because we are not.
I mean, I want to make sure,
Population.
I want to make sure our employees are paid fairly, but I
I do
want
too.
to make sure that we're doing it based upon comparable facts that are the same, not comparables that are possibly, in my opinion, skewed.
Population is number 3 for the criteria, so that's part of the point value that they're giving. So I know, like, as far as homes, but they're still considering the population in that
Right.
map there, so.
Right, so the EAV is, you can see the points, like if you look even on, just as I scroll over here, you can see how the different communities, their data is shown, and then the points are shown. And so you can see how some of them, they did score 0 points in some of those categories, but yet when it came to some of the other categories, they scored higher. So their total points ended up being a little bit more towards the top with, Fox Lake scoring like equal 100 points with Antioch.
Yeah, and just regards to methodology, I think when you're doing these types of these studies and analysis, I don't know that you're ever going to find 100% perfect blended formula to find a way to do it. When it becomes of a particular challenge, when we went through this process independently within the police department, assessing the collective bargaining agreement, one of the largest factors that we found was, although we can identify quote unquote comparable communities, when you look at a geographical area based on a radius, and you say, whatever your radius is, I think when we did our study, we used 30 miles. Every one of those communities in that 30-mile range becomes a competitive community to us. So while there's a number of communities that we certainly wouldn't be comparable to, let's use Gurney, for example, because we know where they're going to be from a sales tax perspective. They're going to have a lot more tax base than we are, but we've lost employees to Gurney because they pay more, right? So it's a competitive community. So I think this is an attempt to find a middle ground, trustee. I don't think you're ever going to find like a perfect scenario. Like, we probably have a hard time finding 100% matches within a reasonable geographical area. If we expand it statewide, probably, but then you start getting cost of living factors, and it's cheaper to live downstate than it is up in the Chicago metro areas. There's all these different factors. So I think MDT has a logical approach to coming up with this. I'm sure if you went to another company, right, they'd probably have a slightly blended formula, but this seems to be kind of generally accepted, best practice within identifying comparable communities. But again, I just ask the board to keep in mind that while we say comparable, really what we have to consider also is competitive. And I've seen those numbers, and they go quite a bit higher than what we're getting.
And I get that, I understand that, but when it comes down to dollars in the end, and that's basically what I'm looking at is EAV and property tax values and what we're taking in. And I'd like to see her data, and I'd like to see the percentage of increase, because my quick glance through this kind of tells me all our administrative staff needs a $20,000 pay raise. And I don't know about our workers. I didn't have it chance to look through that much, but they're all due a substantial raise.
I don't, since we haven't come up with an exact implementation strategy, we haven't been able to come up with a aggregate percentage of what the overall impact is gonna be. Those are a lot of the kind of behind the scenes things that we still have to do once the ranges are established. And like any other type of study, certainly, I don't wanna take us too far off the topic and get us talking about specific positions, but yes, there's gonna be positions that the study is going to evaluate, determine to be further off of the market comparative rate right now. And most of those are gonna be, 18, 19, 20-year employees, the village, that are still sitting near the bottom of the range. And again, are we gonna lose a 20-year employee? I don't know. I can't look into a crystal ball. But it becomes a challenge for recruitment and retention. It's hard to look a 20-year employee in the eye in good faith and tell them, you're at the bottom of your salary range and you've been here for 20 years. And we're gonna hire this 19, 20, 22-year-old kid that doesn't have any of the experience, any of the certifications, or any of the other relevant experience that you may have to come in and make a very small increment for low use. Those are some of the challenges.
And I run into that, I'm sorry, unfortunately, that's the world today. I run into that, my job in the civilian community, I make a decent dollar. They're hiring kids right out of college that are making $5,000 or $6,000 less than me. I have to train them. I have to go in and clean up after them. I have to, they call me in when nothing else works and I fix the problems. So I get the experience versus the inexperience and the dollar cost. I really get that. My question here tonight is, we're comparing Antioch that has a $422 million EAV to Vernon Hills that has a $1.3 billion EAV, and they have the opportunity to pay a lot more than we do. Same as Gurnee. We have to find a balance to make sure our employees are taken care of. But I can't run this village based upon some other village that makes $1.3 billion EAV. I just can't do it.
I think it's a fair assessment.
But she's got tables she wants to go.
I just to add to that all of the factors that we that we use in our comparable criteria are again consistent across the state of Illinois. And the goal behind them is kind of what you're saying, is to be looking at a community's ability to pay. And when you look at who the top comparables were, when we get to that, we did want to cast a wide net, so to speak, for our survey. And so we did go with a cutoff of a total of a score of 57, just so that we could grab a couple of more communities within our comparable analysis and have a good data set when we went through the whole process. But if you even look to the right at the total points of the scoring, a lot of the communities here scored at least 68 and higher. So that's really, in kind of that upper half of comparability when it comes to these specific criteria.
Katie, I had a trustee that has a question. Trustee Basic has a question.
When you did this, did you take how many miles you went out as a crow flies? When you did this?
We use Google.
You use
Google.
Okay.
Google Maps.
Google by alphabet?
No, we use Google Maps.
How'd you pick the towns?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
How did you pick the towns? Did you pick it by, as a crow flies, a mile radius?
Our initial screening was on this screen here. It's all Illinois communities within a 30-mile radius within certain counties and a population between 5,500 and 22,000.
So
that was our
around Antioch.
Correct.
East, west.
All the surrounding counties.
So it's east, west, south.
Right.
This is not questioning the data, but how
So you got Antioch, I don't see Wadsworth in here, My question is, you didn't pick communities out, because the simple thing would be, if you're gonna pick communities out, you do it like a golf average. You're gonna pick communities, and as trustee Pierce said, then you're gonna throw the ones with basically scores out that don't fit our needs. You're gonna throw those out, and you're gonna come with an average. And that's what we're gonna go by. You've got towns in here that don't meet our, that even come close to the average. Because you've got towns in here like Wadsworth aren't in here, and you got other towns that aren't in here that aren't in that 30-mile radius. That's the point the trustees are trying to make. You're missing towns.
Okay, well, we're looking at
This whole
population
report,
size.
you're missing towns, this whole report basically has to go back and add those towns in. And then we gotta get the average from the towns to make sense out of the reports.
We can definitely go back and take a look at the
Does that
communities
make
that
more
were pulled.
sense? You can't leave towns out that are, am I yelling? Oh, I'm sorry. Wadsworth is right next door to Antioch. You get Old Mill Creek. That's a smaller town, but Lakeville, Lindenhurst. They butt right up to us.
Okay, well, we can definitely go back and take a look at that.
Since I'm sure you've encountered this before, since we're uniquely a border town, do you guys, I mean, are you just limited to the state of Illinois, or do you guys compare, Salem Lakes or other towns that are just over the border that we also compete with? Is there some criteria for that, that you guys can look in? Because even though it's a cheese curtain, our people still, take jobs over the border.
We have run into that before in other states, and if there are additional communities outside of the Illinois screening that you would like us to reach out to and survey, we are more than happy to survey those communities.
Okay, just a thought. Questions from the trustee?
I just have a
Trustee
quick
Berman.
comment based off of things that I've heard through friends that are in law enforcement. I can say that there has been a few friends that did pass up Antioch because of the reasons that were stated, and did go and end up working at. There's a few of these towns on here that they ended up at, so I just want to put that out there. It's definitely happening, and these are some of those towns, so.
Like I said, study or not, there's definitely positions, administrative assistants, public works, that are clearly, I don't care what any study says, are clearly under what the threshold should be for pay. So, yeah. All right, so I didn't want, well, we have interrupted your presentation, so if you still care to, you continue to go on with your charts.
I just wanted to go ahead and explain the comprehensive table and the other tables within the report. What you have here, you have clearly position title, their current pay grade, the MGT proposed grade, and then a summary of the survey data that we have in the 50th percentile column, the current pay ranges, and then to the far right are our proposed pay ranges for each of those buckets of positions. So as we kind of scroll through this table, you can see that we have a recommendation of 10 salary grades, and then we have the proposed pay ranges for each of those 10 grades. Grades 9 and 10 are hourly and seasonal positions. So those are a little bit unique. And then on table 2, what we have are those, again, those proposed pay ranges, the minimum and the maximum. And then one of the things that we've been talking about in some of our implementation meetings are different options as to where employees would be placed within the pay ranges upon implementation. And so that's why we have those different placement options within each of the ranges. Those are basically 3% increments up to the midpoint of the range, just to show as an option of where employees could be placed, either based on years of service or based on years of service in their current position. Again, this is just kind of an illustrative option as to one particular way that you could choose to implement the plan.
Hey, Katie? In
Yes.
your comprehensive table, you show the
Yes.
current salary range and then you show the proposed salary range. But the current salary range, then I have to scroll down to somewhere else in this report to see what they're actually getting paid. So I see a range, but I don't know what we're actually paying that position unless I do a lot more digging into the report.
That's because we're having all the ranges.
Okay. Well, we got positions listed here. And that's why I asked for a hard copy of this.
Yeah, it's gonna, hard copy, page to page comparison.
Okay, so I think, what I'm gathering is there's some additional communities that we want the consultant to look at. Like I said, anything we do here, I'd like to, be conscious of the timing on budget, season, so, could we, our next meeting's in 2 weeks, right? Is that a reasonable turnaround for some of this additional data, Katie?
Usually we give communities at least 2 weeks to respond to a survey. So we would have to identify what those additional communities are first, and then we would have to reach out to them to get their data, which is not always a quick turnaround. A lot of times, responding to a survey is not someone's number one priority. But we can definitely at least pull some additional community information together for you. And have that for you ready to look at.
Okay. So we will, I guess, pick the agenda date for this based on your timing. But again, I think the goal is to have this back before we have to finalize budget for this year, which is, Michael, when are we on the clock for that? April?
So that's really a your decision thing. Like, there is no law on passing a budget. There is on the appropriation. So the appropriation has to be passed within the first 90 days of a fiscal year. There's no law that you actually have a budget. So there isn't like a law that says April 30th, it's like the state of Illinois, funding shuts down. There are no bills being paid. That's not what a municipality has. So you're
We have a
open.
little more flexibility. Right. Which is good to know, because I always think it's just weird that a new mayor, a new board has to come in with the last board and last mayor's budget, because that's, I think that's kind of weird. So maybe in the future, in those election years, it makes sense to do it a little later. But okay. Well, thank you, Katie. We will gather as with staff and get a date and get those other communities that they want looked at, and be in touch with you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you very much. All right. So any other business?
Do we need an executive session?
Well, we gotta do department reports. If they didn't quit. We have a department reports. Assistant village administrator.
You get walked out the door.
I'll be quick. A couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity to go to the ILCMA conference down in downstate Bloomington. Over the years, I've had different professions. I guess I've switched careers a few times. I've been hopefully my last career. But throughout my career stops, I've been part of different professional associations, and I've never been part of one that's been as effective or worthwhile like ILCMA. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have gone to the conference. AI is a big topic at these conferences right now, integrating AI into government operations and that sort of thing. So it was great to sit in on some of the sessions. The networking I do there is very valuable. Every time we have issues that come up at the village, I have people from around the state I can reach out to because of my involvement with this conference and this association. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that I had an opportunity to go there. Also, if you go to the website, I am one of the co-hosts of their monthly podcast also. So if you want to learn more about
Jim, what is can you just tell everyone what the IC?
It's the Illinois City County Managers Association. So there's also a national organization that I'm not part of, but the Illinois one is very worthwhile. We've been busy budgeting. All the department heads have been busy getting ready documentation for Michael for our next budget. That's one of the things I've been working on. We have a new parks director that starts tomorrow. I've been trying to get things organized for her, so she kind of walks in with at least some of the budgeting started at least. Now with that, with the Parks Department, we've been today started issuing grant refunds. Like it was pointed out earlier, email went out yesterday to parents, so parents have been coming in. We're starting the refunding process, and obviously we'll tweak it to include the lunch. Thank you. So we'll get that taken care of also. But the good news is with the new parks director, she'll take care of that starting tomorrow. And then also I wanted to make sure you guys were aware, I have prepared an RFP, a request for proposals, that I want to get out, for beer tent operations. The last couple of years, the village has run the beer tent, at a couple of the bigger concerts events. It's, to say it's a strain on employee time and manpower is an understatement. It's a lot of work to staff it, to organize it, to plan it. And at the end of the day, the village isn't in the beer business. So we're going to put together an RFP. If you guys are okay with it, or if you have any feedback, let me know. But I'd like to send out an RFP tomorrow for businesses, whether it's local bars or there's companies out there that provide services to different municipalities to run beer tents, where the municipality gets a cut of the profits. They take the liability, they take the stress of the beer tent operations, and then we focus on other things. If you guys have any feedback, let me know. Otherwise, I could include you on the email and I can start emailing it out. Trustee Pearson?
A lot of times you have volunteer organizations help with the beer tents and they get a cut of the tips and stuff.
Yeah, so part of the RFP is, people will give us their proposals. We will look more favorably on, and that's one of the things I put in there is, like it's up to the operator to determine how they want to staff it. However, it makes sense to them to get volunteer people so they don't have to pay hourly wages, and then volunteer organizations have a chance to keep the tips, because that was something last year, especially the way we tweaked it at the end of the summer for the smoke out. All the groups that volunteered made a good amount of money on tips, and we want to see that continue. So that definitely will be part of this process.
Questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Is he doing the parks?
Parks, we have no presentation, but we, did you give the details, Jeff, earlier? We hired her background, where she's coming from, her name, just generally, so.
Yes, that was all shared with the board.
Okay.
So our new parks director, Katie, will start with us tomorrow. She's got more than two decades of experience within the Parks and Recreation field itself. Holds advanced degrees within the Parks and Recreation fields, is a certified Parks and Recreation executive. So has all the credentials that we were looking for to make sure that we have a professional that's ready to hit the ground running. And an added benefit, she's a member of our community as well. So she has a lot of historical perspective on our community, the things that we do well, has some great ideas on things that we can probably do a little bit better on.
Thank you. Public Works, Dennis.
Just a few things. A lot of my staffs look forward to this week and hopefully the coming weeks of the warm weather. Because prior to that, they've spent a lot of odd hours and night shifts. So hopefully that'll keep the trend and we'll move spring. This past Monday, we had a water main break we attended to on IDOT in Larson Court. So hopefully there weren't a lot of complaints to trustees about water conditions. Currently, I have two requests for bids out that are advertised. One is for the lawn mowing maintenance of village properties and parks, and then the other one is for the maintenance of the new Seaport Tree Park, which will be mowing and landscaping and mulch application.
if you're out and about Peterson Park or Springer Park, take a look at the entry signs. Staff had taken those in on the winter and did a refurbishing of the color and any type of woodwork that needed to be done. And then, as Administrator Gutchow said, the PW facility is near complete on the design development. 100% complete is scheduled to be completed by March 6th. We'll move into construction.
Thank you. Any questions?
I
Trustee
do.
Pearson?
I have one. As far as the Run for Freedom next year with, I totally understand because it goes snakes right through the woods of Antioch. Would it just be the 1 year or would that?
Yeah, I don't, if they have an aggressive outlook, I'm waiting for the final documentations and the construction docs that will go out to bid. So if they're still estimating that we complete what is remaining with the amount of funds that we have basically marked for this year, then it would just be this year. It would be done and out of the woods.
That'd be great.
If the cost does come in higher than what we had budgeted for this year or estimated to be spent, then there may be a phase that would happen next year. I'll know more information once they finalize the estimate and the plans.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right, that's it for reports. I do have a request for the board to stick around for a couple minutes for litigation, potential litigation and personnel with no further business to take place afterwards. Ooh. Motion trustee Bluthard.
Second.
Second trustee Berman, all in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, all in favor, we are exiting the board meeting at 8:48, going into executive session with no further business to take place after executive session. Thank you.